Growing up, I had dreams and aspirations, but always felt like the kid that didn't fit in. For the most part, I wasn't a bad kid, but when I made the transition into adulthood, I turned to the streets for guidance. This led to getting locked up in juvenile hall, doing time in CYA, and eventually a 120-month sentence in federal prison. I had a lot of time to think and reflect during my federal sentence, so I share with you what I learned, hoping I can positively influence someone else's life with Prison Talk. What's up? Big Herc 916, getting down with another fresh out Prison Talk. So I had a female viewer email us about her man getting out of prison after 15 years and what is it she should expect of him. And I'm like, look, I don't know your relationship and it's not for me to speak on another man's business. So you need to talk with him, and hopefully you guys have been communicating enough to where you guys have an understanding of what you expect from each other when he does touch down. But a reality check for you guys out there, and for the guys who's watching, who's done time, you already know what's happening. But for the women who may be watching this, look, don't have any false expectations when your man gets out and he's been gone for 5 years or 15 years or 20 years, and he comes out and you want him to beat down your cheeks and only your cheeks. Now, he'll beat them down. He's going to beat the hell out of them. And he's going to probably beat them things till you get tired of it. But what you got to realize is that anybody who's been gone that long and haven't had female contact, they're like a wild animal being let out of a cage. And literally you can smell the scent of another woman. You can smell her body odor. You can smell her essence when you're out in public. You're so aware and heighten your senses because you've been around nothing but male button ass that it's hard to control a lot of those emotions. And so if he has the opportunity to hook up, he may hook up. Now it doesn't mean that he should turn around and leave whoever he's with to go be with the female, but he might creep a little bit. And that's just reality because he's curious about other cheeks because he's been beating his meat for over a decade. He's gonna beat his cheeks up at home with his wife, but now he's like, wow, what else is out there? And it's something that every man getting out of prison fantasizes about, unless he's in the, you know, penis and balls. It just you're over stimulated just by walking around in places where there's females. And I've seen where guys have gotten out and they were with women they met while they were in prison, maybe developed a relationship, some got married, they get out, the women puts them up, does all the stuff for them, blah, blah, blah. But this guy still creeps off and does some side cheek busting and um, violates the trust of the woman in his relationship. And I'm not saying it's right. I mean, you should have like I said, a level of communication where, look, give me a hall pass, let me go do my thing. I have the urge to go bust some other cheeks and whatever, or bring your partner in here, let us all bust cheeks together. But your mind goes crazy when you're in prison thinking about all the women you're missing out on. And a lot of guys got locked up, when they were in their 20s or whatever the case may be, and they kind of matured at a time where they should have been kind of sowing their oats. They should have been getting it out of their system and, settling down maybe in their early 30s and 40s. But when you haven't been um, on the streets and you've been basically matured in prison off a magazine and adult books and fantasy and whatever else you had access to, that's not real. You want to get out and experience the real thing. So, you go on a mission and you just try to just literally destroy any cheeks you can find within reason. And some, you know, they don't even have to be fives because in prison, you got fat prison guards, women that dudes is beating their meat over. You wouldn't look at her on the street, but now it's a fantasy, man, because that's the only female around. And these women know it. A lot of women get jobs in these prisons because they want the attention and they know that these guys in here would literally ravish them if given the opportunity. And some of them hook up with these guys in there on the side. And when they get out, some of them go and have relationships and the whole nine. But yeah, these are women who aren't getting attention on the street that get it in prison, and it makes them feel like a queen. And it's understandable that every woman wants to feel like a queen and be treated with respect and have a level of trust. But you're dealing with a dude who just got out of prison. And some dudes, yeah, they, oh, I'm just going to work and do the right thing. I'm not going to mess around. But there are cases more than not where guys get out and they want to have some fun. And it doesn't mean that they want to, like I said, break up the relationship or get a divorce, but it's just a fantasy, man. And in prison, you play out millions of fantasies to try to escape the confinements of the brick walls. I mean, the metal beds. You think about all kind of stuff like, oh man, I remember this girl. You go through every single female you've ever slept with, and you try to reimagine what it'd feel like to sleep with her again, to bust her cheeks. You play out all the women you broke up with, all the ones you talked to, didn't hook up with, the one you hooked up with. It's just like you're so desperate for female attention that it becomes obsessive to a degree. And maybe not all guys that did time think like this, but I know for me, I was just like, wow, man, out of all the places I'm at right now in my life, what if I could be over here with this other female I used to hook up with, or this female, or that female? Man, what if I would have hooked up with her and maybe I wouldn't have made the choice to do what I did that got me to prison? Or what if I would stay with her? Or what if I would, man, I played that shit out millions of times with hundreds of different women that ran through my mind. And it's just it's a shitty feeling. So when you get out, I know for myself, I'm like, man, I'm not getting married. Man, I'm gonna bust a million cheeks when I get out. And I was just on a cold mission. I was literally like the the coochieanator, the terminating coochie, just going through them, just on a cold mission. I'm being real. People are like, oh, big man, look, man, from 26 to 30, 34, man, shit. I was on a cold mission, man. But then, I met my wife, and it kind of changed my perspective on relationships and having a connection. But as humans, our raw instinct is animalistic, and you know, if there was more sex in the world as far as relationships and people being happy, I'm telling you, there'd probably be less violence, man. If drained, you were getting drained every night by your girl. I mean, she just before you left the house, she's draining you, and you just, man, you would be like, you're so relaxed. A lot of people they're stressed the hell out and going through tension. They ain't got no sex, they ain't got no money, they stressed out. But even if you're broke and you're getting drained, you feel a little bit better about going through your day knowing that you got the busting nut. That's the reality of it. you know. But if you got a pretty wife and then she's gotten to a point where she ain't giving you no cheeks, and you dealing with communication, you feel like you're not respected and you ain't getting the props, and man, you're going to look for some side cheeks, you know. But like I said, getting back to the guy getting out, he's dealing with an animalistic reaction to having been caged for years. But like, if he's anything of a dude with any type of, I would say, long-term integrity and values, he's going to realize that this woman who rode for him, who invested in him, is there for the long run. Therefore, he'll try to make sure he can maintain that relationship and somehow have it to where he can still get a little side cheeks, but it's just a natural male thing, especially if you're a guy who's high testosterone, you're high action, high adrenaline, you're very, athletic, you're aggressive, you're one of them dudes, man, shit. Busting cheeks is like playing, 3 or 4 games of basketball on a street court, man. I mean, that's the kind of, exhaustion you're talking about. And then it's just, it's a high, man. It's a high for a dude. But, yeah, I didn't want to get involved in her relationship and tell her that, hey, man, your guy's he's gonna possibly cheat. It's very highly likely he's gonna cheat, but that's the reality of it. But it doesn't mean he doesn't necessarily love you. It's just a part of getting out of prison. And if you're a guy who was used to getting a lot of ass before you went to prison, you go to prison, you get out, you're not gonna be like, oh, I'm not gonna have any more ass for the rest of my life, but just one piece of ass. You're gonna want to bust some cheeks, man. And raw, real, just keeping it uncut, man, that's the reality of it. Because a decade of beating your meat, man, shit, you gotta you gotta go out there and experience some shit, and that you're like a tiger walking through the jungle. You know what I mean? You out there, man. You are you are you a male that's went through something that's very traumatic, and you wanna get out here and have some fun, man. But yeah, not I know I didn't answer your question, but I'm just telling you, man, the psychology of men getting out of prison and wanting to have a little fun, and knowing that if you're the first one he hooks up with, you might not be the last. If you catch him later on, he'll probably have slowed down a little bit, but if you catch him on that first run, man, shit, he gonna be blazing through some cheeks. Big Herc 916, fresh out.